are concerned about getting that alert, but are we getting another one?
3.6.
3.6. Why is it using this? But the action they should be prepared to take.
All right. Asking what people should be doing with alerts and where it's a right to do it, let's remind ourselves this is not a physical science question. Unfortunately, we often have physical scientists trying to give the answers. When there have been social science experiments on what people do, it's not a clean answer. Giving more alerts convinces people that the system works and generates trust in it. Lots of false alarms generates distrust. Part of the concern in the current early system without complete funding, how many false alarms would we be issuing? So that's a factor that goes into the decision. The other problem, of course, is that actually there's a lot of use to the alerts beyond damage. Nobody in Los Angeles County was damaged, nowhere close. We didn't get anywhere close to it. We just all felt it. That does not stop people from being scared from feeling it. And one of the questions is, what's the psychological benefit of getting a few seconds warning and knowing that it's coming? And that's a hard thing to measure physically, and therefore it's a hard one to include in those practical decisions of how you do it. And that's it becomes a decision, it becomes a committee decision. What's the, balancing off all of these different things, what's the best way to go?
I have a question about the faults. You said there's 2 possible faults that this fell under, is that correct? Or
There are 2 faults active right now. We don't know for sure what they are, but you can see it from the distribution of the aftershocks. Notice that it's an L-shaped. Those, faults don't turn corners. That means that we've got 2 separate faults, the fact that it formed that L.
So this is...
And what are those? One what you said was the little...
We hypothesized a relationship with Little Lake, which would be the northwest trending one, but that's something we don't have a name.
Yeah, and until we get reports from the geologists in the field to confirm if there was surface rupture and if we can align that with a particular fault, we're not going to be able to make a definitive statement. So at this point, it's just based on a speculation that it may be that fault. Now, obviously, earthquakes occur on faults, so this was on a fault. Having a name is another story. And it appears what probably happened here. This.
Oh, let me point. You talk to the camera.
Yeah. So Lucy was talking about the fault that goes. There's one that goes northwest and that one that goes northeast. The main shock appears to have occurred on the fault and then ruptured to the southwest, so along that fault there. And the motion that we expect on that fault is such that it would release the stress or the confining stress on that fault to the northwest.
Okay,
so Lucy can show with her hands, yes.
So this moved like this, and that pulled material away here.
Right, pulled the material away at the top, and that released that secondary fault, which, in a sense participated in the earthquake, but also is showing a lot of activity with the aftershocks. Again, until we get the geologists in the field, I can't confirm that, but that's the working hypothesis at this point.
Could you characterize that part of California geologically in terms of number of faults, activity, earthquake activity?
Lots of faults, lots of activity.
Yeah. And it actually...
nice concrete...
The fancy way of putting it.
Yeah, so, well, and maybe the answer to the question that you're maybe getting at is this was not unexpected in this area. It's not one of the major faults that we have, but certainly there are active faults. And, having a 6.4 in this part of Southern California is totally appropriate or totally typical.
It gets back to that geologic time frame question. We have a national seismic hazard map where we take all the geologists know about all of the faults and say what's the relative risk. And this is one of the higher risk areas because of all of these faults. Each one individually moves not that often, but there's a lot of them. So, if you look at any of our maps, this is a high... a more active, more at-risk region. which means having earthquakes once every few hundred years. I mean, that's this geologic time problem that we try to form patterns on human timescales, and the pattern is on geologic timescales.
And
How
this
does
in
this
no
area-
way releases tension or pressure on the San Andreas Fault.
That's wishful thinking.
Yeah.
How does this area compare to Los Angeles County, the Inland Empire,
In terms of,
in terms of the geophysical understructure, the likelihood of this type of activity?
Well, there, yeah. In a general sense, very similar. We have many faults underlying Los Angeles, active faults. So an earthquake like this, it occurs out in the desert, and on these faults, could very easily have a similar earthquake in the LA region. It's the same, undergoing the same type of general stress loading, and we have many active faults. And as Lucy was saying, on a geologic time frame, hundreds, thousands of years, an earthquake like this is just one of many that occur. On a human time frame, we may experience 1, 2, 3 of these in our lifetimes. So it's a much different perception.
Can you speak to the Special Weapons Center there and the fact that they use geothermal energy? Does that have anything to do with either triggering an earthquake, or is it possible that they might suffer some damage?
you have two completely different questions. What might have happened damage-wise, and what's the relationship of the geothermal energy production to the ongoing earthquake activity? I would expect that there's some damage at China Lake. They are too close to too big an earthquake. And, on the other hand, this isn't a level of shaking that you can't build to prevent damage. So well-built buildings shouldn't be having problems. In terms of geothermal energy, we know that when you change water pressure, if you are pumping water deep into the earth, down at the depths that earthquakes happen at, you can increase the rate of earthquakes. Geothermal production has been going on here for many decades, so the only way to say there might have been a relationship would to say they really changed the way in which they were doing their geothermal production, which is no evidence. I mean, I don't know for certain, but there's no reason to think that that happened. So it's not what we jump to when we're thinking about
But
this.
meantime, some of the complaints about fracking had to do with the fact that areas that don't normally see seismic activity.
Right, but this is not an area that normally doesn't see seismic activity. This is an area that normally has lots and lots of earthquakes. And
So any contribution, you just don't.
if there's,
You see it as negligible.
it would be a negligible contribution because there hasn't been a significant change in the pumping. Back in the early 80s, there were lots of earthquakes in this region, and through the 80s. And then it went down into a quieter period. When there was a lot of geothermal production going on, it went into a pretty quiet period. So it's, so maybe that, just say there's no relationship. This is back, we are afraid of randomness, and we try to make patterns. So think of the questions that you've been asking me. Does this make the big one more likely? Does this make the big one less likely? What aftershocks are we going to happen? What's the significance of this? Was it related to X? Was it related to Y? All of those are attempts to make patterns because we hate randomness. But fundamentally, outside of the fact that one earthquake triggers another, the distribution on a human timescale is random. And so the answer to you answer these questions, and we're like, well, no, not really, and right? Because fundamentally it's a random distribution, and we have a human hunt for patterns. That said, there is one non-random pattern. Each earthquake makes another earthquake more likely. And mostly they're smaller, and we call them aftershocks, and a few percent of the time the aftershock's bigger than the main shock, and we change the name. And the rate at which that happens is different between different sequences. We are seeing that this one is one of the active ones. Therefore, expect a lot of aftershocks. That's the one thing we can say. It's not a prediction of a particular earthquake. It's like predicting rain in Kauai. When the rate's really high, you're going to be having it.
What's the count now as to how many aftershocks?
I think we were, as of 20 minutes ago, we were at 10 magnitude 4s. We might be at 11 now.
Yeah, let me see if I can update this.
And the threes have gotten up to about 40.
It's loading. Okay. So,
Oh, look at that. Oh, how
yeah. We have 159 aftershocks, and I'll say that's above magnitude 2 or 2.5.
Yeah.
And we're still at 9 that are above magnitude 4. So we have not had another magnitude 4 in the last 20 minutes or so. And as Lucy said, this is maybe a little bit higher rate than is typical, but not unprecedented.
I have a question. I know earlier when you first came out here, you weren't sure of the exact time frame, and I don't know if the time is different in LA versus how long the earthquake was felt over there in Ridgecrest.
Oh.
Do we have I heard 50 seconds, I heard 30 seconds. Do we know how long
Nobody
the
said.
rumbling was?
No way it's that long.
Oh, I'm just
Okay.
saying people rumbling.
Okay. Yes, people
Rumblings on the
rumbling.
rumblings.
The Earth itself probably was producing energy for about 5 seconds, given the size of the fault. I know that when I tried to count, I got 10 seconds, which would be that 5 seconds plus reverberation, because as the waves travel from a long ways away into the Los Angeles area, they bounce off of rocks and you get some echoing that goes on. But the actual duration of the earthquake will be an analysis that hopefully Rob will get done within the next day or two,
Yeah.
but probably 4 to 5 seconds.
Yeah. An earthquake of this magnitude, and what Lucy is talking about, the actual rupture on the fault plane where the rocks are breaking, maybe a few seconds at most. The waves, what we feel, the shaking, radiate and propagate away from that. And as those waves propagate away, they actually kind of get stretched out. And so what we feel here in the Los Angeles area, there's a whole sequence of waves because they've been reverberating around in the Earth's crust. So we may feel 10, 15, maybe even 20 seconds. 50 is 50 is a little bit long, and I wouldn't say it's impossible, but that seems a little bit long.
So I guess the short answer is we don't really know.
No, the short answer is it depends on where you are.
Yeah, and we do know in the sense that where we have recordings, we can actually measure. It kind of depends on what you mean by shaking. You know, is it what you felt or what the instrument recorded? So there is some, I'll say, subjectivity on that. It also could depend on where you are. The ground may have shook for 10 seconds, but if you're up in the 3rd or 5th floor of a building, that building may have started shaking and it may have lasted another 10 seconds or so. So it's not an unknown, but it's really dependent on many other factors.
As a comparison, this is probably the Earth's producing energy about 4 to 5 seconds. Northridge was 7 seconds. Landers in 1992 was 25 seconds. And our model of the big San Andreas earthquake is about 100 seconds because it's a much longer fault.
Do you have any idea of what kind of rock that deep in the earth is actually breaking? Is it some sort of igneous rock, something something people are familiar with, something that's hard as granite?
That area, it is granite.
Yeah.
It's the Sierra and Batholith doesn't actually end at the edge of the Sierras. It extends, the granite extends under that area.
Yeah, so it's hard rock. That's what's breaking, and that's why an earthquake happened. If it was soft or unconsolidated, we wouldn't get the same.
You don't get the earthquake when you're not pressed together. Okay.
So, any other questions at this point?
When's the next one?
Well, next briefing. Is that what you're asking about?
I don't know that we're going to have much more information.
Yeah, and so what I'll say is, unless something else changes, we're not planning to have another briefing at this point. As I had mentioned, we do have geologists out in the field, but they're not going to get there for another couple hours, so it's going to take a while to get that information out.
So maybe 5?
Well, no, I'm going to say, unless
I'm
we
going
have...
to go home
Yeah.
to my family.
Yeah, unless we have something new happens, we're not going to do another briefing.
And won't you officially name this the Searles Valley or
Searles Valley.
Searles.
Searles.
Searles?
LES.
LES.
Searles.
Thank you. Now,
Okay.
one blue dot that's sort of away from the cluster there, is that just aberrant?
It might be mislocation. Because when the ground's moving a lot, then there's a lot of waves coming through, and the automatic system goes in to pick up, and sometimes it gets it wrong. For a little while, we had a big earthquake showing up like way above the Death Valley, but that was
Yeah.
that
Or,
was
I mean,
misread.
or it could be
It could be.
yeah, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Fourth of July.
It's got very philosophical there, talking about earthquakes.
Lucy Jones and Robert Graves from the U.S. Geological Survey giving us another update on this 6.4 magnitude earthquake that hit up in Searles Valley this morning at 10:33 a.m. That's about 125 miles north of Los Angeles. A lot of stuff going on. We've had reports of damage in Ridgecrest. They had a couple of fires there that have been put out. And that is where our Erin Myers took the long trek, and she and her photographer finally got up there just a short time ago. And she joins us now live from Ridgecrest. Erin?
Good afternoon. We're here at Ridgecrest Regional Hospital, where they did actually have to evacuate patients earlier today. I'm going to get right into an interview with Jade Glenn with the hospital, talk to us a little bit more. Now, how come you guys made this decision to get people out?
Really, we made the decision to evacuate just from caution and safety. We have our seismic experts coming right now just to analyze the building, check for structural safety. And so once we know the full extent of the damage, then we can make better decisions. But for now, it was just on the air of caution and just to keep our patients safe. There were reports of, aftershocks, more tremors, things to come. So we're really just erring on the side of caution and getting people out while we have time in case of anything else.
And I know there has been quite a bit of damage all throughout this area in Ridgecrest. There have been fires. There have been reports of buildings being evacuated along with apartment buildings, I've been told. And we'll go ahead and show you some of that video now. What was the damage here that you were able to see?
Right now, I've only really seen a few small cracks, nothing major. I haven't obviously been right inside the building. We're keeping everybody out. The most important thing really to communicate at this time is that our ER and urgent care are open. So if people do need help, they can come. We have our triage tent set up at the front there. And we will assess people as they come in and determine whether they need to be taken into the ER or not, which is still open at this time.
And then now I know you said you have moved the critical patients. Actually, they've gone to other hospitals, correct?
Yeah, we had about 25 patients, and there's a mix of ambulance and air ambulance working together to get those patients out to other available beds in the surrounding area.
And there were some injuries, I heard, from the earthquake as well, from people that were here.
There were, yes. Nothing life-threatening, but there were certainly some minor injuries, yes.
And then on a personal level, you said you were at home when this happened. What did it feel like? How scary was this for you?
Yeah, it was actually really scary. It was my first experience of an earthquake. As you can probably tell, I'm from England originally. I just did my citizenship this Monday for the United States, so it's been quite a week, and now my first earthquake. I was at home. We all know when something happens at the hospital that we just get straight down here, so that's kind of what everyone's done, and we're all just pulling together.
And that's what I was going to ask you. How has been everyone's spirits? How is everybody holding up with all of this? Because it is so frightening.
Yeah, I think everyone's just really pulling together and cracking on with it and just making sure our patients are taken care of. That's at the front of everyone's minds, really, and that's what we want to do, is just make sure the community's safe at this time.
And do you guys have any idea on when you're going to be able to bring patients back in? A time frame on that yet?
Not right now, no. I believe we're just waiting for those seismic engineers to come and look at the structural damage and just let us know if it is indeed safe to move back into the building.
Thank you for talking to us. We really appreciate it. And we'll keep showing you some video that we have of the damage in this area. We do know all hands are on deck. Kern County Sheriff is helping. Kern County Fire Department is putting fires out. There have been house fires. There have been some other things they've been dealing with. Quite a few stores in the area, grocery stores, liquor stores. Everything was coming off the shelves. Now, as for how many people were injured, they do not have those numbers yet, but there were injuries. And we do know they have set up some areas for people to go if they need to get out of their homes. Care McGee Center has been opened as a temporary cooling center along with Burroughs High School. Those are two areas that you can head to if you need to. But once again, any injuries or people that need to come to the hospital, you can come here. The ER will be open. They are treating here as well at that triage area, but a lot going on. And we do know there have been quite a few aftershocks as well. The largest I had seen was a 4.6 magnitude. So we are just going to keep following all the things that are happening out here, but they are expecting more aftershocks, and obviously a lot going on here at the hospital. That's the very latest here in Ridgecrest. I'm Erin Myers. I'll send it back to you.
All right, thank you very much, Erin. And again, the original hospital in Ridgecrest where she is, they had about 25 patients. They needed to move out of the hospital just because they need some engineers to check for any structural damage. And, a few patients came in, just some really small minor injuries, nothing life-threatening. So really, as far as Ridgecrest goes, under some structure fires, really, surprisingly, not a lot of real permanent damage, which is good. And the best part is nobody got hurt, seriously.
Yeah, that was the good headlines today.
Yes,
It said no one injured, no one killed, and structurally, I'm sure there's a couple of structures that did suffer some damage, but nothing, fortunately, that's significant.
Even in LA County, just small little issues, nothing major on this end as well. And in reference to the hospital, I mean, you think about scheduled operations or people who are in ICU and something like this happens, it must be terrifying at the hospital trying to figure out how do you move them, where do you move them. Luckily, they didn't have too many people to evacuate out of that, and they'll be able to make that assessment and then hopefully get everything cleared and move back in eventually.
Yeah. We also learned a lot about the earthquake warning system today. You know that if you live near a quake, if it's 5.0 or greater, it's going to send out an alert. If it's less than that, which many of us experience today, you don't get any alerts at all. And then also you have to remember the intensity has to be greater than a 4. And for example, here in LA County, we all only got to about the intensity level of a 3. So both of those parameters we didn't reach high enough to get the information and the information sent to our phones or our devices. So
And
again,
it gives us 45 seconds. Is that correct? Is it that something may happen? I feel like that's what they said.
somewhere in that
Yeah.
in that area. Yeah.
All right, let's go back to Caltech. Christina Pascucci is there. She's been monitoring all of these news conferences that we've had today from Lucy Jones and Robert Graves. And Christina, I saw one of your tweets. I guess this is information you got from Lucy Jones that the Naval Air Weapons Station in China Lake, which is east of Ridgecrest and south of Trona, according to what Lucy Jones told you, significant damage there on that naval
in this very moment.
At that Naval Weapons Air Station?
Yes. Yes, exactly, Glenn. I'm looking at my notes right now, and the seismologist told me exactly what you just said. Significant damage on the base of the Naval Air Weapons Station on China Lake. And I was doing some research. It's a really fascinating facility, a $3 billion facility there, and massive. It is, in fact, is the Navy's largest single land holding, representing 85% of the Navy's land for weapons research and development. So a lot going on there, some geothermal activity, and I want to bring in Dr. Lucy Jones about that. Thank you for being with us.
Sure.
Can we talk first about the China Lake and what's happening over there? And I know the question was posed with the geothermal facility. Could that potentially be the cause of an earthquake?
We wouldn't see, I mean, we know that when we change water pressures in the ground, we can set off earthquakes, but there's no evidence that that's going on in China Lake. They've been, the geothermal system up there has been running for decades, and no evidence that there's been a change in that. So I wouldn't think this is part of that. Also, this is a region that has lots of earthquakes before there was any activity going on, any geothermal activity going on. We see lots of faults in the region. We're still trying to confirm exactly which faults moved in this earthquake, but there are plenty of options.
And also you're saying there is significant damage. Can you talk a little bit about that?
We don't know. I don't have much information about the damage. We've heard reports of structure fires in Ridgecrest, and just our distribution of shaking implies that there should probably be significant damage to older structures and potentially especially non-structural damage to newer structures.
And looking live at this map, I mean, I know we've had a number of over 4.0. We're expecting an 8% chance for a 5.0 or greater. Can you talk about the probability of what we expect to see after there's already been 100 plus aftershocks?
Well, the aftershocks are dying off with time. We've seen less in the last hour than we saw in the first hour, so that's a good sign. That's the way they're supposed to be happening. But this is an earthquake close to the size of Northridge, and the last magnitude 5 to the Northridge earthquake happened in 1997, 3 years after the main shock. So this is a region that's going to have a lot of shaking today and has the potential for more aftershocks coming along over even in the next few years.
You were saying earlier, you said people should go and enjoy themselves today. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because this obviously freaks a lot of people out throughout the LA area.
Well, here in the LA area, we had very mild shaking. We're a long ways away from this earthquake. The ability of one earthquake to trigger another dies off with distance, and we are far enough away that it's extremely unlikely that we'll be seeing any impact, there's really no change in our rate of earthquakes. Now, I was actually talking about, someone had been listening to the Big One podcast, and they said, I feel like I should act like it's a 50-50 chance every day of the earthquake. And I was like, if it was 50-50 chance every day, it'd be 99% by the end of the week. So really, that's not the case. It's about 1 in 20,000 per day. Compare it to your daily risk of being in a car accident. It's about 1 in 7,000. But you still wear your seatbelt every day, don't you?
Right.
And so, no, it's only a 1 in 20,000 chance of having the really big earthquake on any particular day. But I still store water, I still have earthquake supplies, and I still wear my seatbelt.
You do such an amazing job of making this understandable for people and bringing this very complicated science down to something that people can relate to or understand. San Bernardino County Fire was talking about potential gas leaks, saying that quakes of this size can rupture lines, that we've seen cracked roads. What do you want people to know about all that?
Okay, for the people in that region, so up there in the Owens Valley, yes, there's the potential for cracked gas lines, for cracked water lines, for damage to roads. All of those are likely, and be very careful going out anywhere in the next few days. Look for damage within your own area, but also recognize that does not apply to all of San Bernardino County, the largest physical county in the nation, and that it's really only applying to the area up immediately where the earthquake happened. And by the way, too, there has been some discussion that I was predicting a magnitude 5. I've never predicted a magnitude 5. What I've been trying to say is the rate is high, and therefore somewhere within this aftershock sequence, yes, it's likely that we'll have a 5. It's not a prediction of a particular event.
You also compared predicting the aftershocks like predicting rain in Kauai.
Well, that's right. I can predict rain in Kauai today. Do you want to say I'm successful? Right? Because it rains every day in Kauai, it's a pretty good bet. And saying there's going to be a magnitude 5 is really the same thing. The rate is high enough that it's probably going to be true. It's not a prediction of a particular event, though.
I know you want to get to celebrating 4th of July with your family. Any other information we should leave our viewers with before you go?
Oh, I think, what we always say, this is a good reminder. This is the first time we've had an earthquake above 6 in Southern California in 20 years, since the Hector mine earthquake in 1999. But on the long term, we see an earthquake above magnitude 6 somewhere in Southern California about once every 3 years. So we've had a very quiet time. We shouldn't think that that's normal. This is more than normal for Southern California.
Dr. Lucy Jones, thank you so much. Appreciate you.
Very good.
Happy 4th. Hope you get to enjoy it. All right, you guys, you heard from her. She does such a great job making this very complicated science understandable, and we are going to continue to follow any additional aftershocks. They're expecting to have 4s, possibly a 5, so that is going to be normal for the area. And again, geologists heading to this scene around the Ridgecrest area to try to determine whether the ground was ruptured, whether kind of damage they're dealing with, and as soon as we get those details, we will continue to bring you the latest information. Glenn and Lou, I'll send it back to you.
All right, Christina, thanks for those updates. Dr. Lucy Jones, she's funny and very smart and just very clever.
Yeah, and basically just said, really at this point, there's nothing else that we can really tell you.
Yeah,
there
was an earthquake.
We've given you all the information. There's going to be a lot of aftershocks. Could be a bigger one coming sometime this week. Just have to wait and see what happens at this point.
Could happen next month.
But the good news is that video right there is pretty much the worst damage of anything we've seen. There was a liquor store that had a lot of damage inside the store with bottles falling. And
then the road.
And a 12-inch crack in the highway going up to Trona.
Yeah.
And that's it, which is good news.
I think a lot of nerves were rattled.
Yeah, well.
More than anything. And there's that, I think it was a fire captain that we talked to earlier from San Bernardino saying that it can be very unnerving when this happens for people, and it's not like life-threatening necessarily, but people do really get upset, and if they are prone to have anxiety, that situations like this can happen. The earthquake itself, but also the anticipation of another earthquake possibly happening.
Especially when Lucy Jones is the one telling you that there's another one probably coming.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, we all know this happened at 10:33 this morning. All of us were here at work. Well, Kai, you were in the parking lot in your car, in your vehicle, didn't feel it, but definitely felt it when he walked into the building because of all the scurrying of the news folks here in the newsroom in the studio.
And since you mentioned that, I want to give a big shout out and kudos to all of our producers, our writers
Yes,
here at
of course.
KTLA. They always do a great job hunting, gathering, getting the video,
Yes.
getting the reporters, our assignment desk, getting the reporters out to where they need to be to give us all this great information. So thank you guys so much for doing that today.
Oh, and also, too, as we do in the field, when you're reporting, you switch gears, right?
Yep.
Going from, like Mark Mester at the Huntington Beach July 4th parade to... He
Earthquake
did sign an
coverage.
autograph today, though.
Yeah,
He
from,
did an autograph picture
from a
today.
woman from Maine, of all places.
Yeah.
All right, let's get back up to Ridgecrest, the regional hospital there. We heard from Aaron Myers just a few minutes ago, where we heard that 25 patients have been evacuated while they check out the building. Let's go back to Aaron.
Good afternoon, you two. A lot going on here at Ridgecrest Regional Hospital. They did evacuate the patients about an hour after the earthquake. We do know there were some minor injuries. You can see here we have fire department, the police. There is a triage center set up outside of the hospital as well. And I'm going to bring in Jim Simmons to talk to us a little bit more. You're a consultant with the hospital. What brought you out? What have you been doing when you were here so far today?
Sure. Well, in Ridgecrest, we have an extremely active and capable volunteer community. We have about 35,000 people here, and it's very common for people to turn out in event of urgencies, fires, earthquakes, whatever, and come to places where they can be of some help. I work with the hospital here. We have about 1,000 people, including our ambulance crews, and a lot of people responded here knowing there might be an issue. It turned out that after some review of the facility, we decided to evacuate about 25 patients. About 5 of them went via helicopter. The others are going by ambulance. We're trying to get more ambulances in here from San Bernardino, Barstow, Palmdale, Lancaster. So right now it's going okay.
And you were telling me you were born here. Have you experienced anything like this in your time in Ridgecrest?
No, I haven't. We have as many as 100 earthquakes a day. You never feel any of them. Once in a while, every 6 months or so, we get a little shaker where you can feel it. Today we had one at 10:02, which was fairly dramatic. Then we had one at 10:33, which tossed me right out of my chair and knocked things off the shelves, pictures off the walls. We had fires in our neighborhood, house fires. We had a couple incidents of Kern County Fire responding to chest pain, things like that.
Thank you for talking to us and coming out and doing all of this good work here. We really appreciate it, and stay safe. We are going to actually break down and move to another location because we are hearing there is going to be a news conference at City Hall, and we will bring you that information when we get it. I will send it back to you from Ridgecrest.
Aaron, how long did it take you guys to get out there?
About, I would say 3 hours almost, 2.5, 3 hours to get here. It was quite a drive, and obviously a lot going on out here right now. But the good news is, yes, there are injuries, but so far nothing severe, which is all you can ask for with this kind of earthquake.
Right, exactly. All right, Aaron, thank you so much.
Interesting what that gentleman said. You know, they felt a little something about 10:02. Of course, the bigger one hit at the 6.4 at 10:33. But he said it's pretty common up there.
Yeah.
Just about every day they feel something.
Feel something. Ooh.
Well, the folks in Mammoth know that all too well also.
Yeah.
You go up there's earthquakes every hour, and then you don't feel some you do feel, and once in a while you get a good one.
Earthquake country.
Yep, we live here.
The thing is, we live here and we know it's here, but when we don't feel them very often, you sort of get a little like, oh, yeah,
you
I'm never
forget.
going to happen. You forget until,
I'm okay with that.
Yeah. Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, again, this one was was called a strike slip fault, so that's why it felt more rolling as opposed to jerky. A lot of times earthquakes are very like a jolty, and what did you call it earlier? It was like
It felt sort of like Jell-O.
Yeah, it was like Jell-O, sort of moving and flowing. People mentioned it felt like they were on a boat, or maybe they had vertigo just for a second, or they just got dizzy. One guy said he thought it was his age. Getting older. But it was kind of interesting, too, because people were saying they still felt, like 20 minutes later, that they still felt a little queasy and nauseous. And Dr. Lucy Jones explained that's the low frequency energy from those wavelengths that come from the earthquake. And that's why those stick around a little bit longer. If it were more of a high energy, jerky earthquake, those can dissipate pretty quickly, like basically like a high frequency disappears faster than low.
Yeah, well, those jerky ones are the ones where you can really see some damage.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, because it's like, taking a shot. All right, and also, like we said, a lot of aftershocks, which Lucy Jones describes as a robust sequence.
I like all these
And
the things we're hearing today are interesting, all the terminologies.
And that's pretty much all that, if you look there on the map, that's what all those yellow and red and orange marks are. Those are aftershocks.
Yeah, the red circles are over the last hour. The yellow are over the last 12 hours. But some of the reds are beginning to turn to yellow, so we have to remember that because time is going by as we make our way through the afternoon. So we're seeing a lot of activity, though, up there. If you took count of some of the circles on there on the screen, up to 30, 40, 45 aftershocks at least. And there's many that are hidden underneath some of those circles as well. So we've got a lot of seismic activity that continues to take place into the desert communities up there in San Bernardino County. Dr. Lucy Jones obviously said that we can expect this to continue, and it is continuing. There's no doubt about it, but it was also pleasing to see that she's ready to just go enjoy her July 4th.
Yes.
She has said what she can say.
That's a good sign.
That's a great sign.
Yeah.
Coming from the expert, she's going to go home and enjoy her family and the rest of the day and celebrate Independence Day, knowing that this is sort of typical for this particular area of Southern California. We should be thankful that nothing happened, but yet kind of get ready to go about our business again as normal.
I know next week I'm going to make some copies of some important papers. I'll shake on that. How's that? That I'll make some copies of some important papers and put them in an earthquake file, knowing that I can pull those just in case, because you sometimes think, oh, it won't happen to my building or to my home, but as we saw that fire on that house from the gas line, I mean, that happens fast.
It's so dangerous.
Yes.
For that to happen.
Incredibly dangerous.
And I've been talking about this and preaching the fact you got to know where your gas lines are. You got to know how to turn them off. Right here, I'm looking at, obviously, audience, you're not seeing this, but I'm on YouTube. There's so many YouTube examples, great experts showing you how to find where your gas line is in your house, what tools to use, how to turn them off, which is the off and which is the on. So I've found at least 120 videos on YouTube on how to turn off and turn on your gas line and find your gas line. Also, your hot water heater. These are all things that you need to know where they are, how to turn them off and on so that you don't jeopardize your structures, your homes.
Find your hot water heater, you'll find your gas line.
Yep.
Yeah. And you don't want to figure that out on the day of the earthquake.
No.
So Dr. Lucy Jones also saying, too, though, that there's a pretty substantial 1 in 20 chance that that area is going to probably get some more earthquakes. So I'm sure they're prepared for that. They've heard that. Nothing here in LA County, LA City, that they can't do any kind of predictions or anything.
Yeah.
So I think everyone's just sort of like, okay, moving on. It definitely will be a topic of conversation at July 4th picnics today, but I presume that everyone's moving on unless they own that liquor store. That liquor store's got some cleanup to do.
Yeah, another town that we've heard there's been some I wouldn't say a significant amount of damage, but some damage would be the city of Toronto, which is northeast of Ridgecrest, driving up Highway 178. We talked to the one gentleman there, Ed, that was with his granddaughter. Losing a lot of stuff off the shelves, also a 12-inch crack in Highway 178. But that's really about all we've heard from that area, which is pretty isolated. Also, we're told there is significant damage at the Naval Air Station in China Lake. Exactly what kind of significant damage there is, we're not privy to. After all, it is a government facility, and it's not some place you can just drive onto. But that was some information that Lucy Jones did pass on to Christina Pascucci there at Caltech.
A lot of fire crews out today, obviously working extra hard today because of the holiday and accidents that can happen and drinking and driving, et cetera. But they are definitely busy going out and doing some surveys, not just here in LA County, but Kern County as well and San Bernardino County. I'm sure other counties are helping out Kern County as well, just in case they need those. Also, if you're traveling or if you are expecting people to come in, we have been told that LAX is under normal operations at this hour. So while there may be some delays just in general, nothing is being delayed because of this earthquake.
Got a text here from, I accidentally asked about Hemet, which is in Riverside County, not San Bernardino.
They felt it there too.
A woman tweeted that I'm in San Jacinto/Hemet. We felt it pretty good. I'm in an RV and it shook the trailer hard. My mom thought it was me moving until it started getting stronger. So
yeah,
again, that's, I said LA is 125 miles north or south of where this earthquake hit, the epicenter. Hemet, obviously a lot farther away, and they felt it all the way down there too.
All right, let's check in with Jennifer McGraw. She's in Pasadena. Obviously a big fireworks extravaganza going on there tonight. Is anybody still talking about the earthquake on the streets there, Jennifer?
Tourists from all over keep coming up to us and say, did you feel the earth shake? And unfortunately, my photographer and I didn't because we were driving on the freeway. And that's the thing, because we're in Los Angeles County and so far from the epicenter, we could have missed it. But we did talk to a whole lot of folks who actually felt those tremors. Take a listen in. Did you feel it and what happened?
Well, I just felt I thought it was like shaking, right? And it was like, I thought I was getting dizzy. That was the earthquake. And I felt it.
Did you run out of the shower? What did you do?
I just stood there. It was like nowhere to run.
You hang on to something. Yeah, I was hanging on to the counter where I was at and talking to the sales lady. She said, oh, wow, there's an earthquake. And we were all looking around at the dresses rocking back and forth.
We were just standing still, just scared, But it came out all right. Nobody else do it. In the hotel, they didn't pay much attention to it, They didn't seem to.
Those weird Californians.
Yeah, they're used to it, I guess.
Is this your first earthquake?
Yes, that I know of.
Isn't that a great reaction? People standing in the shower just holding on for dear life. People from Texas having their first earthquake. I even interviewed a woman today who says she thought her baby was coming today because of the earth shaking. And again, if there is any damage to report, you can always call 211. But so far, LAPD says they haven't had any injuries or damage to report. Now, we're reporting live here in Pasadena. Jennifer McGraw for KTLA5 News. Back to you.
Yeah, it looks kind of quiet on the streets there, to be honest, at 2:45 in the afternoon. Nobody shopping?
Maybe they're all headed over to the Rose Bowl for the big fireworks show tonight. That's obviously the place to be.
Exactly. Everybody wants to see a good show.
Yeah.
All right, good to see you. First day on the job. We put her to work.
Yep.
She was supposed to be training. I think she's gotten her training in now.
Yeah. Well, like I said, if you work in TV news, it's the same everywhere,
No
basically.
matter what.
As far as
The same sidewalk.
how you do it, so that's probably what the training day would be. It's like, wow, they did it just like where I came from.
Exactly.
All right.
We saw water rolling around in a pool earlier, too. Remember the active pool? We've been showing this video the majority of the time. This is some of the first video that came in. This is probably the most substantial video that we've seen today for damage. Lots of cleanup for them. Broken bottles everywhere. There's the water in the pool. The water in the pool is always interesting because you got to get your phone turned on, and then by the time you film it, it seems like it would.
It's the end of it.
It's still going, right?
Yeah.
So it must have been pretty strong at the beginning.
Yeah, I'm sure it was sloshing around pretty good. All right, again, we continue to monitor the situation here in Southern California. This earthquake, the biggest one here in 20 years, a 6.4, hitting at 10:33 a.m. this morning, 10 miles northeast of Ridgecrest, which did suffer some damage, along with some other towns up in that area. And, even one of our reporters here, she suffered some damage at Narissa Night at her house. She had a big glass mirror wall that came down on the stairway, and her kids were upstairs, and fortunately, she yelled quick enough for them to stay up there, so they didn't come running down when all that glass came crashing.
I love that she said she yelled for them not to come down the stairs to protect, went into mama mode, as she said, yet she was standing under a glass chandelier.
Yeah.
She said she realized she was probably not under the best thing there. If you have any video or pictures from your experiences with KTLA, you could always social media them, hashtag KTLA, or you can send them over to KTLA@KTLA.com. And we can get some of that stuff, hopefully, up on air. to show what's happening in your neighborhood, or if you felt it or not. Again, it's hashtag KTLA. We are also streaming at KTLA.com. We're going to be live here at least until 4 o'clock this afternoon. But we'll definitely, if you have to leave your house and you still want to kind of keep in touch with us, you can stream it at KTLA.com.
All right, and again, the video you're seeing here, well, here's the swimming pool sloshing around, but just before that was that liquor store in Ridgecrest, which, boy, that's going to be quite a mess they've got to clean up. And obviously, I'm sure they're insured, so they'll be fine, but boy, it's a lot of damage to clean up.
Well, a lot of people don't have electricity today, too. That's kind of a bummer, especially out there in the desert, pretty hot in the 90s. Christina Pascucci is with us again. She's been monitoring the several press conferences that have happened out there. What's going on right now, Christina?
Well, Caltech and the USGS, they're just on this, and they're analyzing data right now. I kind of want to give you, we've been looking a lot at the podium where we saw Dr. Jones and Dr. Graves speaking, but just to kind of give you the lay of the land here and show you all the reporters, the cameras that are here. To the left, you see that glass area. That is a lab where they have some of the seismologists who are dealing with media, who are analyzing incoming data, because it is developing by the minute as we see additional aftershocks. As of about 2:15, there were 159 aftershocks. That was 2 and greater, I believe. They had, a number of 4 and greater, and also they're expecting a 5. They said there's an 80% chance of that. So you can see there all the dots in the Ridgecrest area. They were telling us they believe that 2 fault lines that are active in the immediate area were involved in this, and it's too early to tell, but there was Little Lake. They were looking at that. They were looking at another one that is active as well. And if we swing around, these are the number of seismologists that they have here that respond to these incidents. And, some of them, you recognize those names because we've been seeing them today, Dr. Jones and Dr. Graves to the right. And look at this data they put on the whiteboard. I mean, this is just a typical afternoon for them. So really fascinating to hear them break down this complicated science into what, we all can understand. And a number of things have come up. One, what San Bernardino County Fire says is they are watching for potential gas leaks because there is potential for rupturing lines when you have quakes of this size, of course. So they're looking at that. They're analyzing the damage in the area. Geologists are headed to see if there's any rupturing in the ground. That's all really important. And we know significant damage on the base of the Naval Air Weapons Station on China Lake. So that's something they're looking at as well. They have a geothermal program there. There was a question earlier, could that contribute to an earthquake? And while it could, because you're pushing water into the ground, that likely did not happen unless there was something significantly changed in their program. But that is a massive facility out there in the Mojave Desert. So that's something we're waiting to hear additional details about. We are also talking a lot about some of the damage on the roads, and I believe we have this image for you of this break in one of the highways, one of the major highways, 178, and this was reported. I talked to San Bernardino County Sheriffs and also the fire department, and you can almost see the way in which the ground would have been shaking if you look at that white line there alongside the road, and I'm trying to pull it up myself right now so I can describe it exactly for you as it was described to me. But Highway 178, a 12-inch break according to the Sheriff's Department. But the good news in that case is that it's still passable if you're using vehicles. Another thing that has come up a lot is a shake alert system. So the USGS says the shake alert system was working perfectly in terms of letting them know a quake was on its way. There was more than 40 seconds alert in the LA area before the actual shaking occurred there. However, a lot of people saying, what about the Shake Alert app? And Dr. Graves touched on that during the news conference earlier. Listen to what he said about why the alert didn't come through on that app itself.
The system actually worked as designed. So an alert was sent out by the U.S. Geological Survey. The app with the City of LA is set up with various thresholds. The first threshold is a magnitude 5 earthquake or greater in LA County. It will send out an alert. This earthquake was outside of LA County, so the app performed as designed. It's just that the intensity levels were below that threshold that it had been set by the app.
And we also heard from LADWP. They're conducting routine post-earthquake inspections of water and power facilities in Los Angeles, also along the LA aqueduct system running through the Mojave and Inyo counties. very important to check there, but no significant impacts reported at this time. And while we have seen a number of issues, injuries, things like that, like Aaron Myers said earlier, nothing significant to report now. But I want to bring in Dr. Jen Andrews. Thank you for talking to a seismologist here with us at Caltech. I know we've been following this closely. What is the latest in terms of any additional aftershocks that we've seen?
So we're now up to recording something over 200 aftershocks. So we haven't seen too many big, but we're still seeing 3.5s, high 3s. So people are probably still feeling those shakes. So yeah, it's still keeping us very busy. And as you can probably see from some of the visuals, we're looking at these 2 conjugate fault planes and just trying to understand what that means in terms of how they're interacting and future behavior.
And we talk about how they're interacting for future behavior, and I don't even know the term you use, so it's because I'm not a seismologist, but dumb it down for us. When you're talking, are you talking about the Little Lake fault line and the other one that's in the immediate area?
Right. So if you look at some of the visuals, you can see that there are actually 2 different trends. So it looks like 2 different faults have been involved in this current activity. That we've got 2 different structures moving, and so it's really about us understanding, which of these was primarily responsible. What does this mean in terms of how they interact? What hazard they might pose?
What do you think? I mean, we live in earthquake country. We all know to be prepared. I remember in the 94 earthquake, I was jolted. I flew into my parents' bed and we felt that violent shaking. What do you think is the single most important thing you can tell people when they feel the movement of the earth?
Definitely the advice here is drop, cover, hold on. So that's the biggest, most important action they can take to protect themselves once they start feeling that shaking. Of course, there's lots of other preparedness they can do ahead of time, but when they start to feel the shaking, basically protect themselves from anything falling, anything breaking around them.
Someone said put a pillow over your head. Do you think would you recommend that to people at home?
Well, it's definitely better than nothing. As long as it takes the impact instead of you. So whatever you can do to protect yourself from those flying objects.
Do you have any new information in terms of damage or things we're following, like ruptured lines, anything like that?
We don't at this time. I haven't seen any follow-up information, but I'm sure that's being gathered.
And something else we've been talking about all day is that chance for that 6.4 or greater. It's 9%. It's been heightened over the typical 5% chance for a quake to be bigger than the big one that we just felt. What do you say about that in terms of as the time goes on, the chance gets lower?
It does. The likelihood of having a big one should decrease over time. But an interesting thing with this, and the reason that we've increased the likelihood of that bigger one, is just how many aftershocks we're seeing. So if we start to see that activity either continue at higher levels than we expect or increase, that's obviously a warning sign to us. We haven't seen evidence of that yet, but it is this very rich, very energetic aftershock sequence.
Okay, last question. Just when you guys respond, when you all, I know a lot of you live close to Caltech, so you can get here quickly and with a big event like this. So what are some of the first things you do, the first order of business when you arrive here on scene to analyze the data, or what do you do?
So we are looking at those waveforms in real time. We want to make sure that we're giving out the correct information, certainly about the main shock, and then we're making sure that our systems are still recording so that we can keep updating. It obviously puts a big stress on our systems with all this data pouring in and all the information we need to provide. So it's our job to verify that we're giving the best possible and most up-to-date information. So we're there looking at those waveforms straight away.
Thank you so much. You guys have a whole group back there analyzing this data in real time. So thank you. I appreciate it, Doctor. Okay, we are going to continue to monitor this. Breaking news, you guys. But for now, Glenn, Lou, I'll send it back to you in KTLA studios.
All right, Christina, thank you so much for that. We are awaiting a press conference that is expected to get underway around 3 o'clock at Ridgecrest City Hall, and we'll bring that to you live. We also have a reporter in Ridgecrest. Aaron Myers is covering that for us from the ground. A couple things I was looking at. We've been talking about preparations. Just a little bit of a warning for, reminder for people that when you are in an earthquake, if you're in a vehicle, I know, Kai, you talked about this, having stuff in the trunk. It says if you're in a vehicle when the earthquake happens, chances are you're not going to feel it. But if you do, pull over and stop, actually. If you're in the bed, you're supposed to stay there until it's over. Protect your head and your body if possible. If outdoors, stay outdoors, and then do not get in a doorway and do not run outside. Didn't know about the outside thing. Is that because things could be falling from
you've got
electrical
flying
lines?
glass
Yes.
coming from buildings. You do have
Right.
lines that could come down.
Yep.
And if you're driving and if you have electric lines that come down, that would be a terrible situation to have happen. But you obviously would want to stay inside of your car until they can get those lines powered down. A lot to think about as we look through the day today, and with this event of a 6.4 magnitude that struck earlier this morning at around 10:33, Glenn and Lou.
It's also good to have a powered battery for your cell phone, like an additional battery that you just don't touch and just have on the side. I think I just got one of those a couple weeks ago. I got to get that charged, but you have a tendency to want to use it. But if you can keep it somewhere and use that, because chances are your phones are going to die eventually, especially if you lose electricity like a lot of residents did today.
And also a radio. You would want to keep a radio with you. Yeah, and if you go to a survival store or a REI, there are those great radios where you hand crank them.
Yes.
And they work without the opportunity of having a battery.
Got it.
All right. Breaking news, it is the largest earthquake to strike Southern California in 2 decades, the region reeling after a 6.4 magnitude earthquake centered in the Searles Valley. Good afternoon, I'm Glenn Walker.
And I'm Lou Parker. The slow rolling earthquake jolted many getting ready to celebrate the 4th of July holiday.
As shaking was felt widely around the region and was felt as far away as Nevada as well as Mexico. Here's a closer look at the epicenter in the Searles Valley. This is about 11 miles east-northeast of the town of Ridgecrest.
And we've got live team coverage from across Southern California. Let's start with KTLA's Christina Pascucci.
Hi guys, good afternoon. And I'm monitoring information on my phone. I'm talking to seismologists here in the lab, and the media is starting to clear out from where we've seen a lot of the news conferences here all day long. Just to give you the lay of the land, you see CNN Espanol behind me. You have some reporters from other networks, and then the lab where these seismologists have been gathering, getting a lot of data. And actually, since people have started to clear out, can we just go down the hallway here, Andre, a little bit and show them? This is the media room, but if we go out into the hallway, you can just see all of the others. Dr. Lucy Jones. Doctor, do you have a sec before you leave, or last one?
One last question?
One last question. I know you want to get and enjoy the 4th with your family. We're live, but just parting words, things that you want people to know as we're going into today, the biggest takeaway from the 6.4 quake.
Okay. We can't make a pattern that tells us when the next one's going to be. But every day has about a 1 in 20,000 chance that the San Andreas will move, and that in a big earthquake. And that's about the same as your chance of being in a car accident today. It's a little bit lower, but about the same. And I wear my seatbelt every day, so we need to be ready for the earthquake every day. This is a reminder. We could very well be heading back into a more active time. We have to at some point.
Right.
It's just been too quiet for the last 20 years. So this is a good reminder, but we also need to remember that having a big earthquake in Ridgecrest does not change our chance of having an earthquake in LA. All the time we're talking about potential for triggered aftershocks, that's only for that same area.
Did you see the picture along Highway 178 by chance?
No.
This is the road, and I'll show the viewers too.
Look at this. You see how it's offset? You see?
And let me
one
try
side
to turn
move.
that around for them too, so they can see it.
Okay. So one side, look at how this comes along, and then the rest of it's there. That could very well be the actual fault. Get some geologists out there and test down as you go farther down the line.
The actual fault right below there?
It might be just because there's this offset here, right?
Wow.
If it was just opening, right? But you can't tell from just the one. Now you need to go and check, if it's the actual fault, it'll extend for 10 kilometers.
That's a fascinating analysis. I know you can show a picture like this to a seismologist or doctor, get a lot more interesting info than we could just looking at it.
It's a hypothesis, though, because sometimes you get those offsets just because of settling. So you'd have to go and check a side, go look not just at the road, but what goes along on the side of it.
And one more thing, China Lake, significant damage reported there. Geologists said to be on scene now and making their assertions of what exactly went down. But what can you tell us about that area?
Oh, it's an area that historically has had a lot of earthquakes, so we aren't surprised at all by having a big one here. But it's, I wish I had more information for what's going on the ground, but I don't yet.
We're waiting for it. Thank you.
Thank
I
you.
appreciate it. You've been amazing. Thank you,
Thanks.
giving us your time.
Sure.
She deserves to go enjoy the holiday with her family, so we're going to let her do that. But, we've been getting so much interesting information, and I wanted to show you just this hallway a little bit where we are, and you see the analysis of the tectonic plates globally here on my right and on the left. This is the analysis of the quakes as they unfolded. First, you had the big 6.4 and then all the aftershocks. And they said you could see, Lucy Jones was describing how she felt it for 10 seconds and she knew, because it was rolling and the way that it felt everything, she knew two things. One, that it was over 6.0, and two, that it was pretty far away. And that ended up, in fact, being the case. The likelihood of seeing a 6.4 or greater has been upgraded to 9%. Usually it would be about 5%, so that's something else they're analyzing. And the geologists, when they go to this entire region, look at the area, they're going to see if there's any ground ruptures. They're going to analyze the ground there around the naval base, China Lake, that I was telling you about. I think we have a video to show you what that base looks like. And the reason that's significant, because that is a weapons research facility, a multi-billion-dollar massive weapons research facility. And it's just pretty amazing what they're doing out there. It's significant because it's the Navy's single largest land holding, representing 85% of their land for weapons research. And so, they have a lot of sensitive equipment. What is the extent of the damage there? And what is the concern moving forward when you have aftershocks that will be above 4 for sure? We've already seen at least 10 of those, and likely larger than 5. There's an 80% chance for 5.0 or greater. They also have a geothermal facility there at that naval station. And what they do is, to get that energy, they push water into the ground. The question was asked, well, could that cause an earthquake? And the answer is it could, but Lucy Jones said she didn't think it was likely that would be a cause to prompt this one. Another thing they're looking at, crews on the ground, San Bernardino County Fire, the Sheriff's Department, the local police, they're all looking at the possibility of gas leaks. You had the evacuation of the hospital in the Ridgecrest area. So, a lot of people responding fast. And again, it's not only the concern of the first shake, but then what happens then. The good news is every day that passes, the likelihood of another big quake in that area along those specific lines, according to the seismologists, is low. One final thing to mention with you guys is the shake alert system. That has been blowing up on social media, Twitter, a lot of people saying, well, where was my alert on my app? I simply didn't get it. And the reason for that is because, according to the USGS, the shake alert system was working. The people who had access to it got an alert about 40 to 48 seconds before, if they were in the LA area. But on the app, they did not get an alert, and they explained why. Listen to this.
In the city of LA, there's an app to issue warnings. That warning did not go out, and the reason why is because the estimated intensity of shaking for Los Angeles was intensity 3. The app does not kick in until the expected intensity is above 4.
So that's a perspective from here at Caltech, and I know we have reporters on the ground getting reaction from people who felt it. I know that I was interviewing someone, a Rosie the Riveter. She was in Hawthorne, and all of a sudden her cane started to sway, and she said, oh my gosh, is there some sort of movement? But it wasn't a violent or very strong shaking, at least not in that area. But a lot of people have a lot of different stories about it, so we'll be hearing that. That is the latest. Glenn and Lou from here at Caltech on this perspective. I'll send it back to you.
All right, Christina Pascucci, we thank you for that, doing a yeoman's job today. All right, many people posting videos to social media showing the damage and all that shaking that took place during the quake.
That's right, and KTLA5's Corrine Winter is live in the newsroom with a look at the latest there. And also, Corrine, you felt it as well. Thought someone was playing a prank on you in your live truck.
Thought someone was shaking our big old news van, Lou, and it turned out it wasn't. But the biggest earthquake in decades, and boy, did it jolt so many people today. Even those living far away from where it was centered, this is what so many felt and heard.
A 4th of July shocker that shook homes and businesses, knocking items from walls and even store shelves. This was a scene in Ridgecrest, captured on cell phone video. A grocery store with aisles littered in liquid and broken glass from the powerful quake, the strongest felt since 1999. Stunned reaction from those who were preparing for holiday backyard celebrations. Pools and hot tubs splashing with water from the shaking. And again, in communities far removed from the epicenter. It's not just residents who ran for cover at first. But this video from a live stream on the Channel Islands recorded a bald eagle, a mom, taking flight when the earthquake hit. She flies away from her nest, but being the devoted mama bird, she comes back to her frightened babies. Quite a scene. Celebrities also took to Twitter, like famed producer, writer, and director Ava DuVernay, who wrote that this was the longest earthquake she had ever experienced and actually thought this was the big one. Writing, "Respect Mother Nature, she's the boss." The Rock also chimed in, saying he felt a little movement in the valley and encouraged everyone to be safe and, most importantly, stay prepared.
All right, this is a news conference at Ridgecrest City Hall. Let's listen in.
Why we're here at the Ridgecrest City Hall is we're trying to give some updated information of what we know is the latest of events that have transpired here today following the earthquake. My name is Andrew Freeborn, the Public Information Officer with the Kern County Fire Department. What we will do here today is various speakers will speak. Let's hold all the questions till the end, and then that will give us a time to be able to answer some questions from the podium from various speakers. If this is running long or if we start to repeat the same types of questions, we'll go ahead and conclude the press conference, and the various individuals that are here today will be available briefly for one-on-one interviews, a breakout immediately following the press conference. So let us start this press conference off by introducing Chief McLaughlin of the Ridgecrest Police Department.
Good afternoon. Well, at 10:33 this morning, July 4th, Ridgecrest and the Indian Wells Valley was shaken with what's reported as a 6.4 earthquake. The events that followed that earthquake for the police department, and I'll let Fire talk about their response. We were inundated with calls, with fires, and obviously stores that were shaken with stuff falling off the shelves and various items falling. So obviously that took tax on not only our dispatch center, but the officers working. So immediately we called in anybody that was available. And being the 4th of July, those numbers were a little bit lower than normal. So we got an overwhelming response from our allied agencies. So they immediately notified myself and said that they were sending people as well. So then we started, we have a huge volunteer base here in Ridgecrest as well. So as these people started to come in, we started doing a grid search of streets, looking for damage.
That was an earthquake.
Yeah. So obviously we needed to check for structures that may be down and look for victims that may be trapped. So we started to search for those. In the meantime, our patrol staff was tasked with responding to the fires as well as down power lines and the other things that went with that. So as more people got here and we were able to assess the damage on a quicker basis with more people. So with that, I'll let Fire talk about their response.
Thank you, Jason Schillinger, Battalion Chief with the Kern County Fire Department. I'm the Unified Incident Commander of the incident here today. Right after the earthquake happened, we responded to multiple pieces of equipment. We have a USAR task force. We have both of our USARs that from Bakersfield, USAR 52 and USAR 61 have been dispatched to the Ridgecrest area. I have also ordered a OES, Office of Emergency Services, Urban Search and Rescue Task Force. That's going to be coming with 29 folks specializing in heavy rescue with equipment, with canine dogs for search. What we're trying to do is we're trying to make sure we're ahead of the curve if we do get an aftershock. Obviously, we just had an aftershock. We want to make sure to get as enough resources we can possibly here to make sure that we take care of the communities that are going to be affected. We also have 2 different strike teams, one from Region 6, San Bernardino area, and then also a mix of resources from the county that are all coming over. Helicopter 408 is assigned here, and that is going to be a resource that is going to be used. Kern County Sheriff has also given their helicopter, and there's been multiple agencies that have asked if we needed any of their resources. So right now we do have plenty of resources on this side of the 395 to assist with whatever's needed. And we do have a lot of our task forces. We're going through the communities. We're checking for gas leaks. We have fielded a lot of calls for water leaks, gas leaks. We have had one structure fire confirmed. That was in the beginning. We did make a stop on that. About 50% of the house was saved with a reinforced structure from the county of Kern. So right now I feel that we do have a sufficient amount of resources, and we are ready for the future if any aftershocks. There has been a lot of aftershocks. We've heard aftershocks up in the 4.0 area, and nothing bigger than what we've had in the beginning. So right now we feel that we're good on the operational side. So I'll field questions after the other individuals talk. Thank you.
So, our mayor has declared a state of emergency for the city of Ridgecrest. The city of Ridgecrest has done a proclamation, and the county of Kern is also going to do a proclamation, and those are sent up throughout the state. So just to tell you who is here now, obviously Kern County Fire is here with us, but immediately after the large quake, California City sent 2 officers. Bakersfield PD sent 4 officers and a sergeant, and then numerous agencies reached out and offered their resources. So, but I would like to give a shout out to our volunteers, our CERT team, and our PACT volunteers, and our retired captain is here, Paul Wheeler, cooking our food and trying to keep these guys fed. So want to make sure that we give them a shout out, and also the Red Cross for setting up for those people who need shelter. So thanks, and I'll take questions after everybody else also.
Thank you. So let us now please give our attention to Mayor Peggy Breeden as she speaks to us as well.
Thank you all for coming. I would like to say that I just received a call from Governor Newsom, and that he has signed on the proclamation also for a state of emergency. So with the state, we've heard from the White House. Kevin McCarthy has called numerous times. Vince Fong, Kamala Harris's office. We have talked to many, many local entities. Supervisor Mick Gleason has been there saying, what can we do, and offering all his assistance. So with all this cooperation of many of our local entities, both state and federal, we expect we will be able to move on from this and not see too many awful things happen that could have happened and may still in the future, because we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. So as we go on, I thank you and I appreciate you all. Thank you.
Okay, now we can turn our attention to Vice Mayor Wallace Martin.
I just wanted to say that the response at the higher levels of leadership is absolutely instant. Senator Grove's office just called me 5 minutes ago and reached out, offering any assistance that their office can do. And as the mayor said, I mean, the response has been overwhelming, and the response has been instant, including all the way to the White House. And I think it's most impressive. I want to thank the leaders. A shout out to all of them for instantly reacting to this. It's very comforting, and it should be comforting to all of the citizens of Ridgecrest. Thank you.
Okay, we also have Councilman Scott Heyman, who's available today as well. So
So I'd like to just commend everybody on their assistance and help from the state level and the local emergency personnel and everyone, and just to urge the public to continue to check on your neighbors and help everybody. I saw people out helping. We were gassing generators and making sure everybody had water, and I want to urge everybody to continue that. Check on your neighbors, and we'll get through this, and things will be good. So, thank you.
Okay, at this time we have a few minutes in which we could take some questions for those who have spoken here today. So if anyone has a question, you, sir?
Do we have any firm figures regarding any injuries, and what do we have on an assessment of infrastructure damage, roadways, bridges, things of that nature? Do we have anything yet?
Okay, so CHP, would you like to comment on the question is infrastructure. Do we have an assessment of the infrastructure and how it's been impacted? So we'd like to welcome CHP to speak on this.
Thank you.
Identify yourself.
I am Lieutenant John Williams. I am the commander of the Mojave CHP, which also patrols this area. As a matter of fact, within minutes of the first earthquake, we checked all of our main highways through here, Highway 395, 178, and it's further down to 58 and 14. We did have, on SR 178, we did have one large crack in the roadway that Caltrans responded out to, and within an hour, we had that filled and corrected. We did have some debris and large boulders that did come onto US 395. Caltrans assisted us, and we had that cleared up within an hour of that. Other than that, we've checked every overcrossing, every undercrossing on every main highway all around Ridgecrest, and there's no other problems or concerns.
Utilities? Any failures?
From the California Highway Patrol's perspective, I haven't seen anything, but I can't speak on behalf of that. That's going to be utility company.
Mayor, I have a question for the mayor.
Yeah, question? What's the question?
I just wanted to know, what specifically was it that led you to declare the state of emergency? Was there a specific thing that you saw or you're hearing about that led you to go to that move?
So the question to Mayor Breeden is what led to the conclusion of a state of emergency? Okay.
Because we've had over 87 aftershocks of this, we don't know what's going to happen. And with that, the state of emergency allows us to seek significant help from other governmental entities, and that is the reason why. And I would like to say I talked just recently to Scott Seymour, the manager of the airport in Inyokern, and there is no damage that he knows of at this point in time, and they've examined everything out at the airport.
I have a question. Any reports of damage at China Lake, to the naval base at China Lake?
There's the man.
Captain Paul Dale, Commanding Officer of Naval Air Weapons Station, China Lake. We're just adjacent and abutting the city of Ridgecrest here in the western Mojave Desert. We're large. We're about 1.2 million acres, a little bit larger than the size of Rhode Island. We continue. It's been about 5 hours now since the 6.4 reported quake, and the mayor mentioned the aftershocks that we've had, upwards of 87. We continue to make damage assessments. I don't want to go into the particulars, but there was a question about roadways. All of our roadways are passable. Our entry control points are operating. We have obviously increased the number of personnel that would be conducting operations on a July 4th holiday. And I'm comfortable with the resources that we have right now. We're in communication with higher headquarters, who's been extremely supportive, and we're in communication with local civic leadership along with the Emergency Operations Center here, providing support to each other where necessary. But right now, we're working within our lines, and the city and the county are working within their lines.
Do you know about flight runways?
Oh, well, so the mayor informed me that Inyokern Municipal Airport is fully operational, no reported damage. In terms of the Armitage Airfield, which is on board Naval Air Weapons Station China Lake, the initial assessments are that it will be operational at the next workday. Yes.
No, I was going to put another question. There's a community about 20 miles to the east of here, Trona. A number of individuals are there. This would perhaps be appropriate for Kern County Fire. Have there been any damage assessments there, casualty reports, anything else applying to that community, which was much closer to the epicenter of Ridgecrest?
So the question is, the outlying areas just outside of Ridgecrest, there's various other communities. what type of triage and what has been found in these areas.
So our county EOC, they have been in contact with San Bernardino. We are in a different county, so it's two different areas. And so we do know Trona is an area that we do sometimes respond to, but that's being handled outside of the county through San Bernardino, and they're in contact with Kern County Office of Emergency Services, EOC.
Chief, I have a question for
Go
you.
ahead.
Driving from the Inland Empire up here, I noticed that there were a lot of lights out, power was out at a lot of businesses, possibly homes as well. It's about 100 degrees outside. What is your recommendation for people out there who are at home, they have their fans on, and it's just hot, and they're waiting for the power to come on? What should they do?
There's some power is out, but there's not. They've got a lot of power back on. So the individuals that are out of power, we have set up an area. We are in the process of setting up an area at the Ridgecrest Fairgrounds, and that's going to be an air-conditioned place. Also, the Kerr-McGee Hall here has air conditioning, but a lot of the power has been restored. The issues that we're running into is gas leaks. That's the majority of our calls right now, and then also water leaks, especially buildings that are sprinklered. So those are the hazards that we have right now.
Any major injuries reported?
We haven't reported. There's no major injuries at this time. Yes, sir.
Can you give us a little bit of an overview of the hospital evacuations, the nature of the evacuations? Was there any structural damage at the hospital?
So there is some structural damage at the hospital. There is some sprinklers that are leaking. We do have a building inspector there, a structural engineer, that is taking a look at that right now. Now, when you hear of evacuation, what we did is we took all the individuals out and we pretty much sheltered them in place at the facility. We have shade area for them, we have trees, we have awnings, we have stuff that we're taking care of, and we have fluids and drinks for them there. So right now, they're assessing the hospital to see if we can go back in and put individuals back in there. We do have confirmation that we did take 15 patients to Palmdale, Lancaster area that were from the ER. We wanted to get those to a different hospital just because of the nature of what needed to be taken care of with them.
How many evacuated altogether?
We don't have a confirmed number because a lot of them are they're just coming out, and we're just trying. We don't have a confirmed number on it yet. We're trying to figure that out with my operations chief over there right now to figure out a number of that. So once we do know that, we will release that to the media.
I have a question about fires. 4th of July, I've already seen people lighting fireworks. What's the plan to kind of monitor that? This is a high fire risk area, and monitor what's going on with the earthquake?
Now the fireworks are legal in Ridgecrest. I know there's not a fireworks show tonight. Is that correct?
There is.
So there's none. So there's not a fireworks show tonight. So people can still, we're not going to tell them they can't light their fireworks. They are legal out here in the Ridgecrest area.
Do you feel like you need more people, more help from other fire stations to kind of manage something that might happen with the fireworks?
No, we have a lot of resources here right now. Like I said, I've ordered USARs and task forces and strike teams. And here in Ridgecrest, I've taken Ridgecrest, the city of Ridgecrest, and I've divided up in the north and the south branch. From Ridgecrest Boulevard south, that's going to be our south branch, and our Ridgecrest north, that's our north branch. And that's where a majority of our resources are right now, because that's where our hospitals is at right now.
For those people who are living in the community, what should they be doing over the next 24 to 36 hours in as much as their families, their homes, realizing we are going to have aftershocks? What straight advice do you want to give them on how to conduct themselves in that period of time?
Definitely check on your neighbors, check on your family and friends. Water, keeping things that are going to be able to keep you hydrated, and food, that's going to be important, because we don't know if there's going to be any more aftershocks. We just had one sitting in here, and there's been 87 aftershocks as we talk. Is there a high percentage of another big aftershock? That's unknown. Unlike a fire or a flood, we can predict that stuff. With a flood, we know where the water's going. Fire, we know where it's burning. Earthquakes, we cannot predict.
Would you advise people, because this is what I was seeing initially coming in, a lot of people driving around, in many cases aimlessly. They may need their vehicles, they may need the gasoline in them to go later.
I would definitely stay home, keep your vehicles fueled, keep food and water in your house, and be ready for something that could happen. Unknown if something's going to happen, but I will say from the county fire and the emergency side, we are prepared, and we do have a lot of resources over here to make sure if something does happen, we're good.
Chief McLaughlin, can I ask you a quick question just about public safety? Your officers are going to be out there, of course, going around patrolling. Is there a concern at all about potential looting?
We've discussed that. That's why we have extra people here. I hope not, but that's why we have extra people here. And we've brought in resources from other agencies to help with that. And we'll be patrolling those areas to try to prevent that as well. So let's hope that they don't do that, or at least try.
I had a quick question to Captain Mayor, please. I guess Caltech was saying they did a report that was showing a lot of damage. Did they reach out to you guys, or did you guys hear anything about that report from Caltech?
Is this recently?
From today, they
Oh, today. No, that's the first time hearing anything from Caltech. No, I haven't heard anything from Caltech.
Okay, so they were talking about it. So they were saying that they thought there was significant damage.
No, I haven't. Not aware of any reports from Caltech.
Thank you. So now that we're getting kind of into the smaller, down into the weeds for some of these smaller questions, we'll go ahead and conclude the press conference now. But stick around for a breakout. That way, is it for the good of the entire community?
I think it is.
Okay.
Is there any indication as to how long or when the stores may be open so people can go back and get food and ice and such?
That's going to be an unknown. There's too many speculative factors that would go into that. Environmental health, the checking on the food after a power outage, the utility companies. That's going to be an unknown. We're not going to be able to put a number on that for people right now. But thank you very much for coming here. We can have a breakout so that you can speak to the individuals on a one-on-one basis now for a few minutes, as their time is desperately important right now. Thank you.
Mayor Breeden, can I talk to you real quick? Would you mind?
Crest at City Hall in reference to the earthquake that struck this morning at 10:33. A couple notes out of that press conference. Well, I think the biggest thing that came out, that there was another aftershock, 87 aftershocks during the press conference, or the news conference here, while they were talking, an aftershock happened. But there has been a state of emergency filed now and approved for Ridgecrest. Basically, the mayor confirming and saying that, hey, listen, we've had 87 aftershocks. We had this large earthquake. We don't know what's going to happen in the next couple days. So we wanted to go ahead and file for it, and everything has been set. Governor Newsom and the White House calling to check on everyone as well.
Yeah, that probably sounds like somebody said, well, that's just a money grab. But that's actually what it is it means that outside sources from outside of Ridgecrest in the Kern County can come in to assist if need be. We also heard that, there's only been one structure fire. This one fire that we've been showing you, this apparently was the only structure fire in Ridgecrest. They had like a dozen emergency calls, and this is the only real damage that we can see. They did have to evacuate the regional hospital. 12 patients were moved to Palmdale, or 15 patients that were in the emergency room were taken to Palmdale. There were about, a total of 25 patients that were in the hospital. So everything there seems to be okay. The Inyukern Airport is fully operational. We heard something about the Naval Air Weapons Station at China Lake. Maybe some significant damage there. That was just pretty much denied by somebody that's an official there. But he did say a little bit earlier that the runway will be operational the next workday.
Okay.
Which I guess would be tomorrow. So
yes.
Maybe there could be some slight damage there. Whatever it is, they'll have it taken care of by tomorrow. Also, the Highway Patrol telling us that Highway 178, that large 12-inch crack that went all the way across the road we told you about, the road crews have already gone in and taken care of that. Highway 395 had some large boulders that had fallen onto the road. Those have also been removed by road crews, so all the highways at this point are pretty much wide open.
One of the reporters at this news conference asked about tips for people because some people do not have electricity, and it's upper 90s out in that area. The officials basically said that it's a very small amount of people who do not have electricity, but for those people who don't have electricity, that is a concern for them, especially if they are elderly. So apparently the fairgrounds, Ridgecrest Fairgrounds, are being set up for a shelter where there will be air conditioning. So heads up if you need a place to go just to kind of cool off. The Ridgecrest Fairgrounds have been set up for you in Ridgecrest.
All right, let's head back to Caltech. Christina Pascucci, she has been there all day for the news conferences put on by Lucy Jones in the U.S. Geological Survey. Christina?
Hi, guys. And they have packed up and left for now to go enjoy the holiday with their families as they deserve to do. But they were here for much of the day explaining the implications of what we saw earlier, the 6.4, the hundreds of aftershocks. And while we were in that room just moments ago, we heard the alarm, the early alert system going off and alerting people there was a 4.4 aftershock. In fact, they had a nearly 4-minute warning that they would feel shaking away from in the LA area as that earthquake was happening, although by the time it gets to our area, we probably wouldn't feel it, right?
In LA, the warning times would be more like 45 seconds, but that's still plenty of time to prepare.
So that early alert warning system was providing a nearly 4-minute alert for who?
No, it's not for a minute. That'd be Seattle, but in Seattle, by the time the waves get to Seattle, they're so weak nobody even feels it. So
Wow.
for LA, it'll be 45 seconds.
So that system also alerts people in other parts of the western coast.
So the shake alert system that we're developing is designed to be a United States West Coast wide system. It's not live. Actually, it's only live, publicly available in LA County so far.
So let's talk about what happened with that alert system, because there were people complaining that, yes, the system worked for you guys, but for people who had the Shake Alert app, they didn't get the notification. What happened there?
So we did the Shake Alert system did not send out the alert because we have thresholds. It has to be, the magnitude has to be larger than 5, and the shaking intensity, which is how strong it shakes in a particular location, has to be stronger than 4. In LA County, the predicted shaking was of intensity 3, and so no alert was triggered. But this is a discussion that we're having. What should these thresholds be? If we send out too many alerts, for shaking that is not damaging, at some point people are just going to ignore it. But at the same time, of course, a lot of people would have appreciated to get a notification before the shaking, and so you can argue either way.
And you guys have a fascinating job. I mean, I want to show you this because this is the science they're dealing with, and then they have to decomplicate it or normalize it for the rest of us so that we can understand what we're seeing here. Can you talk a little bit, just really on the surface level, what this is, for example?
Well, there's a lot of things on here. So here we just conceptually sketched how the shaking intensity grows with magnitude, and how that's not a very simple law, but there's a lot of scatter. Because every earthquake is a little bit different. So even though 2 earthquakes may have the same magnitude, they don't create exactly the same level of shaking. And so to handle this, you have to work with probabilities. And that's what makes the analysis a bit more complicated, but also more accurate.
Let's go outside into the hallway here and show people the fault lines. Which map were you looking at? Because this is the area you're talking about near Ridgecrest. And if you could just break it down for us and show where the fault lines that were impacted in this particular case.
Sure. So this is all of California. Here's the Bay Area. Down here is LA. The San Andreas Fault runs right through here, and that's this so-called Big Bend until it, what we think, terminates here down at the Salton Sea. Now, this earthquake of this morning was not near the San Andreas Fault. In fact, it was... make sure I said this right. It's around here in this area.
In the Mojave.
In Searles Valley in the Mojave Desert, between Searles Valley and Ridgecrest. And so it's very far away from the San Andreas Fault. But all these orange lines here that you can see are active faults that we know of. And that's the fault system that was responsible for some of these earthquakes.
That's a lot in that immediate area. So that's why you guys were saying there were 2 you're looking at. I just want to show you guys some video that we have of this big crack on Highway 178. And Lucy Jones, I showed her the picture of it, and she said the way that the lines were, that we could see that the way that in which it broke up, she said that could be the fault right there. And so just fascinating stuff. What are we learning about the movement in that area? During the news conference just now from the region, they had dozens of aftershocks during that time.
Yeah, that is very common. The rule of thumb is that you have 1 earthquake that is 1 magnitude unit smaller, and then 10 that is 2 magnitude units smaller. That's only an average. It can be individual earthquake sequences can be very different. But so it's not uncommon. We expect to have lots of aftershocks of magnitude 4s, even 5, or even larger is possible.
9% chance, we heard, of magnitude 6.4 or higher in the next week.
So that's a statistical estimate, that on average, if you had a lot of these sequences, in only about 10% of the cases would you have an even bigger event than we had. So that would be 6.4 and above. And this probability is highest right now, and it decays over time.
Okay, just parting words, anything that you think our viewers should know? What is the number one takeaway from this? Of course, we live in earthquake country. Being prepared is important, but what do you think our viewers should know first and foremost?
I think this is the most important message, that this is a reminder that we live in earthquake country and that we have to be prepared. We should have, an earthquake preparedness kit. We should know what to do. We should drop cover and hold on when it happens, and we should, about our houses, have them checked for if they're structurally safe in case of an earthquake. We have to be ready. A big earthquake could happen any day.
The naval base and also a small town near the epicenter being on a lake bed, how does that impact them following that big shaking?
Yeah, so lake beds tend to amplify the shaking, and so the same magnitude earthquake, depending on what ground you're on, can have different levels of shaking, and lake beds shake more.
Okay, and potentially much more damage.
Yes.
All right, thank you so much. Appreciate your time and help. We're going to continue to cover this, guys, and have more of the earlier news conferences, the latest information coming out of Caltech. I'll send it back to you.
All right, Christina, thank you for that. And, of course, just before her, we saw that news conference in the city of Ridgecrest where they have now declared a state of emergency.
Yes, and that's where Erin Myers is live. She's in Ridgecrest, and she was at that news conference. Hi, Erin.
Hi, Lou. Hi, Glenn. As you know, we were in this news conference. They were talking about all these aftershocks. There was another one during the presser. So obviously still dealing with quite a bit out here. Things are just ending. But I want to bring in the Chief of Police, Jed McLaughlin, to talk to us a little bit more about all of this. You guys jumped on this quick, but you had a lot of things you were dealing with being a holiday.
Yeah, that's correct. Holiday and, short-staffed, people on vacation. So it was chaotic there at the beginning.
And then how bad have things been, the damage that you've seen? We were just talking about you saying most of it seems to be internal inside structures.
Right. From what the reports that are coming in, the roadways, at least within the city, seem to be intact. And from the reports that we're getting in the stores and restaurants, most of the damage is, falling shelving, false ceilings and stuff like that. So it seems most of the damage is inside.
And then we have had some injuries, but nothing major. How worried were you about that when you felt this earthquake this morning, that how bad this could have been?
Yeah, that was my worry initially when I felt it, and it was very strong. So I was worried we were going to have collapsed buildings or something to that effect, and we were going to be. I was fearing for the worst, and I'm glad that didn't happen.
And can you talk to us a little bit? I know there's been one fire, some power outages, but things are starting to look a little better now. Is that what we're hearing?
Correct. I think it was one structure fire, but we had some other fires that were more grass fires related to down power lines and stuff like that. It's starting to stabilize, other than the aftershocks now. So now we're preparing for the worst, hoping that we don't get any more severe aftershocks, hopefully of the magnitude of the first major quake. So right now we have teams still coming in with Kern County Fire. They have called in some specialty teams in case we do get that, and they'll be in place, I don't know for how long. Red Cross is set up. So we have food coming in, with the stores being closed. We don't have a timeline on them reopening. So we're going to have food and water for those people that may need it, that don't have it. So that's where we're at now, is preparing for the next few days.
Thank you very much for talking to us, Chief. I know you have a lot to do, so we appreciate you taking that time. And yes, just a reminder, the hospital here, Ridgecrest Regional Hospital, was evacuated. They did move some patients. They are working on seeing if the building is sound to get people back in, but anyone who needed to be moved has been. And then, of course, we are hearing from a few people here that have been displaced, but they are staying with Red Cross, and there have been cooling shelters and other places set up as well. That's the very latest here in Ridgecrest. I'm Erin Myers. I'll send it back to you.
All right, Erin, thank you so much.
All right, we're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back.
Yes, it's a good day for singing a song, and it's good day from morning to night.
Good on you, g'day. I'm the Kangaroo. And this is Walkabout Australia, where you'll meet your new best mates. G'day, Olivia. You'll come face to face with your fears. So you can spread your wings and fly. I meant that metaphorically. So join us at Walkabout Australia, where all paths lead to happiness.
Safari Aussie style at Walkabout Australia, now open at the San Diego Zoo Safari Park.
Your bill has been taken care of by the couples who didn't know whether that's table.
What?
Oh my God, shut up! Today we help pick up the tab, and we can help you too with a great deal on a reliable award-winning Honda. Right now you can lease a 2019 Civic LX for just $189 a month plus tax. And people buy Civics more than any other car in California.
It's awesome. It's amazing. We love you. Thank you.
Car wrecks seem to happen in slow motion, but what happens after can move faster than you could ever imagine. Don't let an insurance company rush you into an unfair settlement. You need someone on your side. Jacoby and Myers, we've been on your side for more than 40 years. Call us first.
Let's do it. He likes you.
This summer, add a new member to the family. Hurry into the Mercedes-Benz summer event today for exceptional offers. Mercedes-Benz, the best or nothing. Don't miss Gail on the go.
All right, everybody, welcome to Disclosure TV. I've been going for about 3 hours now, and I think the news is just about to stop recording or talking about the earthquake. It's almost 7 o'clock here, so we're going to go off the air, and I hope you all have enjoyed our coverage. And if you all don't mind, hit the subscribe button, leave some comments. I'll always answer back. Head over to our Twitter account. It's also Disclosure TV, so you can head over there. And I usually try to put a video up about every week or so, so hit the notification button and you'll see those videos pop up. I just put one up yesterday about the volcanic eruption in Italy. You can watch that one. And like I said, you've been watching coverage straight from California about the 6.4 magnitude earthquake. That was more than likely a high 6 and not a 6.4. So we're going to jump off of here, and I'm going to stop the stream, and I'm probably going to eat some dinner. So like I said, everybody, thanks for watching, and I hope you all enjoyed everything that you've been seeing. So this is Disclosure TV, and we are out of here. Trish, thanks for stopping by. I appreciate you all watching.